warm welcome to yet another edition of World Panorama, the only show that gives you a 360-degree view of major global news from through the week. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. Even as Obama wins second term as US President, World Panorama takes a look at the challenges ahead. Focus shifts to China as major political path choice is being made. Will the political reshuffle be a game changer? Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vows in rare interview that he won't be forced into exile and will live and die in Syria. And we get you the highlights of the BAFTA Awards this year. Daniel Craig bags British Artist of the Year honour. And straight to the story in focus this week. With the US election now over, global political focus now turns to the leadership change in China. Although how things will play out in coming days is far from certain. The unveiling of who will be on the Politburo Standing Committee of the Communist Party is among the highlight events, although it's not clear when this announcement is going to take place. The final transition process kicked off on Thursday in Beijing with the opening of the 18th Communist Party Congress, with the outcome expected to be made public by the 14th of November when the meeting ends. Now, America and China are at a critical stage, and it wouldn't be wrong to say that the political transition in the two nations will have global repercussions. That's precisely what we will be discussing on the show this week. And for that, I'm pleased to welcome Professor B.R. Deepak from the Center of Chinese War and Southeast Asian Studies, GNU. Welcome to this show, sir.
Pleasure. But
before that, here's a look at this report.
More than 2,000 handpicked delegates gathered at Beijing's cavernous Great Hall of the People for the start of the week-long session. The Congress meets in a backdrop of growing social unrest, public anger at graft, and a yawning gap between rich and poor. The outgoing General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Hu Jintao, opened the party's leadership transition, lauding the country's achievements over the past decade, but also warning the next generation of leaders of the dangers of corruption in the party and unbalanced growth.
Opposing corruption and building an honest and clean government is a clear stance the party has been adhering to, and is an important political issue the people have been paying attention to. If we fail to handle the issue well, it could prove fatal to the party.
During the Congress, Hu will give up his role as party chief to anoint successor Vice President Xi Jinping. She then takes over state duties at the annual meeting of Parliament in March. Hu Jintao set a new target for China's economic growth, saying that China should double its 2010 GDP and per capita income for both urban and rural residents by 2020.
Our main goal is to realize sustained and healthy development of economy and major progress in changing economic development mode, on the basis of making China's development much more balanced, coordinated and sustainable. We should double 2010's GDP and per capita income for both urban and rural residents by 2020.
Heading into the 18th Party Congress, China has been skirmishing with Japan and other Asian neighbors over a slew of territorial disputes and flexing its growing military muscles to the disquiet of the United States. The government has tightened security in the run-up to the Congress, even banning the flying of pigeons in the capital, and has either locked up or expelled dozens of dissidents it fears could spoil the party.
All right, Professor B.R. Deepak, my first question. This is the first time that the Party Congress in China, which is held every 5 years, is coincided with the US presidential elections. Now, that also gives the world an opportunity to contrast these two political systems, because what happens in America is totally different from what we're seeing in China. In that light, how significant do you see this, these two political events as?
Yeah, well, as you rightly said, that there's no comparison, between the two. One is the people, a universal franchise, right. People elect directly their representative, but in China it is transition, that's why it is not called, election or other things, as it is in US case.
Right.
But yes, it is significant, because the kind of leadership is emerging out of this, or in fact, every party congress after 10 years, it's a once in a decade transition. So a lot more is at stake because in China, no doubt that during Hu Jintao's presidency, China's economy, it grew by leaps and bounds. For example, when Hu took over the reign, it was just over $2 trillion US dollars,
Right.
I mean the national GDP, and whereas by the end of his term, so it is around $7 trillion US dollar, So I think in one way, it is going to throw a huge challenge to the next, that is the fifth generation leadership. Would be Xi Jinping in command and Li Keqiang as premier.
Right.
But I think more than that, it is also about the backgrounds of these leaders. Where do they come from? For example, Hu Jintao himself, he has been from in Chinese we call Tuanpai, from the Communist Youth League, those who have better grassroots connections and have been working in remote areas. All over the country. Hu Jintao himself have been in Tibet for long years, and so is the case with Li Keqiang. Li Keqiang belongs to that faction.
Right.
And as far as Xi Jinping is concerned, he is primarily from you can say the princelings whose parents or grandparents had taken part in the revolution.
Right.
And also the Shanghai clique, so-called Shanghai clique.
So the leadership, of these two will be very different.
Yeah, it would be different, but I think there are also things which is visible from this, party congress when the presence of former President Jiang Zemin was there. He was sitting beside Hu Jintao, shows that his clout is still there and his proteges, would be there. And of course, whose proteges in this new standing committee of the Politburo definitely would be there, and there is going to be a balance between the two factions.
All right. Professor Deepak, hold on to that thought. We're going to be talking more about the party structure in just a moment. The handover of power in China, which began at the meeting of the 18th National Party Congress in Beijing on the 8th of this month, is both complicated and enigmatic. Here's how the system works.
After the 41-year reign of Mao Zedong, which ended in 1976, the party leadership took steps to impose a term limit for the country's highest office. It was during Deng Xiaoping's tenure as paramount leader that the presidency was capped at 2 5-year terms. Every 5 years, the party holds a congress that sets the policy agenda until the next congress. In addition to electing a new president and premier, the 18th Congress will determine the makeup of the party's Central Committee, the Politburo Standing Committee, which comprises the most powerful people in China. It is believed that once the 2012 Congress adjourns, which could be more than a week from now, Xi Jinping will emerge as China's new president and Li Keqiang its new premier. But because the party elite is deliberately unforthcoming and the Congress itself is a secret affair, nobody can say for sure.
All right, Professor Deepak, assuming that the Vice President is Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang is going to take over the place of Wen Jiabao, still, the position in the Politburo Standing Committee, we are hearing that the numbers will be trimmed from 9 to 7. Now, what could be the rationale behind that?
Yeah, there is this thought going on, in political circles also, and amongst the scholars who are, watching China with very keen interest. I think the two departments, the propaganda and then the another related to the, I think is the law enforcement, something like that. I'm, a little hazy about that, So I think the relevance of these two has been thought of, sort of like redundant, okay. So that is why these two are to be reduced, to the original 7. And again, as I told you that, there is going to be, nominations from each faction to satisfy, the needs of every clique, and be most likely, I think, Zhang Deqiang is going to be one of them, representing Shanghai clique.
That is all according to sources, nothing is confirmed as of now. Also, lastly, to sum it up, this is a very hush-hush affair. Not much information has been given out to public, not much media attention, in fact, even. Now, given China's powerful economy and its, increasing military clout, this transition, how impactful will it be if you look at, globally?
Yeah, globally, I think, it is going to be in the footprints of the earlier leadership. I think nothing spectacular is expected from the transition.
So the agenda that this party Congress will set will not be drastically different from what we have been seeing. There are talks of reforms that might happen.
Of course, I think if you see the opening speech of Hu Jintao, he talks about political reforms, I think political reforms in China, they're different from the political reform. They're not talking in the terms of Western democracy. They're talking of building inter-party democracy, and I think the building of the party and the organization, and maybe better trained officials and cadres for the party, because party has ballooned to the number of almost 82.6 million members. And in order to have discipline across the board, it is going to be a Herculean task. That is why I think they are training the party cadres, sending them abroad for managerial trainings, the governance. This is going to be very, very crucial, for these people. But I think more than that, it is also, I think, in the context of India, and also we were mentioning about, Obama's re-election as president. So how the equations between China and U.S. emerges, and also that between, U.S. and India. Because it has been seen that as and
Hold on to that thought, Professor Deepak, because we are going to talk about this in our next segment. We will continue talking about this leadership change, much of which that we haven't seen as Barack Obama is still in the White House. We're shifting focus after this short break to US, how the world will be different in the coming 4 years or not. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for staying with us. Now, talking about US, President Barack Obama had little time to savor victory on Wednesday after voters gave him a second term in the White House, where he faces urgent economic challenges, a looming fiscal slowdown, and a still divided Congress able to block his every move. Despite a decisive win over Republican Mitt Romney in Tuesday's election, Obama must negotiate with a Republican majority in the House of Representatives to try to overcome the partisan gridlock that gripped Washington for much of his first term. The Democratic president's most immediate concern is the fiscal cliff of scheduled tax increases and spending cuts that could crush the U.S. economic recovery if it kicks in at the start of next year.
And whether I earned your vote or not, I have listened to you. I have learned from you, and you've made me a better president. And with your stories and your struggles, I return to the White House more determined and more inspired than ever about the work there is to do and the future that lies ahead.
Buoyed by a slowly but surely recovering economy and a display of cool leadership during Superstorm Sandy, President Barack Obama scored a decisive victory over Republican challenger Mitt Romney after a long, contentious and expensive election battle. Republican and Democrats nationwide watched nervously as electoral votes, most notably in the battleground states, topped out at 303 for Obama and 206 for Romney, leaving 29 currently undecided. Obama swept Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, New Hampshire, Virginia and Wisconsin, also taking all 16 of Michigan's electoral votes, Romney's birthplace, as well as his home state of Massachusetts. Obama's re-election has US investors staring at a fiscal cliff, a looming budget crisis that threatens the economy. The two top leaders of Congress begin talks aimed at heading off the potential economic disaster of expiring tax cuts and the launch of automatic spending cuts.
This isn't something that I'm going to draw any lines in the sand. He's not going to draw any lines in the sand, I don't believe, and I think we need to work together.
There's an alternative to going over the fiscal cliff.
in whole or in part. It involves making real changes to the financial structure of entitlement programs and reforming our tax code to curb special interest loopholes and deductions. By working together and creating a fairer, simpler, cleaner tax code, we can give our country a stronger, healthier economy. Because the American people expect us to find common ground, we're willing to accept some additional revenues via tax reform.
Obama won by convincing voters to stick with him as he tries to reignite strong economic growth and recover from the worst recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. An uneven recovery has been showing some signs of strength, but the country's 7.9% jobless rate remains stubbornly high.
I believe we can seize this future together because we are not as divided as our politics suggests. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions, and we remain more than a collection of red states and blue states. We are and forever will be the United States of America.
All right, our guest, Professor B.R. Deepak from the JNU, is still with me in the studio. Sir, what do you feel about now Obama is back in the hot seat? He's, gotten on with the work that is still incomplete, the challenges that are there, job creation, then the economic slowdown. How do you see him tackling this? Because, the House is still divided. He still has to go through with his policies, taking into account the opposition that he will face from Republicans.
Yeah, rightly so. I think I would, make 2 points. One is as regards his domestic agenda. So that is, he would have to spend more on, we expect him to spend more on education. We expect to spend him more on job creation, and also the energy sector, which is very important, keeping in view the, uncertainty in the, West Asia or the Middle East,
Right.
And secondly, the fiscal, cliff, as it has been referred to, it is really huge, $16 trillion, which is a huge amount, So how to reduce it? I think in this aspect, we see Obama taking a few measures. For example, austerity measures, so-called, as have been going on throughout the world, especially in the Europe. Yeah. Maybe the defense cut, $500 billion defense budget is quite huge. I think in this regard, especially, this makes room for defense cutting when America disengages, from Afghanistan, in 2014. And also, the tax increasing as it has been reported, especially, and it has been promised by Obama himself that those who come under the income slab of $225,000 dollars per annum, so they would have to shell out more in taxes. Right. So I think these are some of the measures he's expected to take. And he
might just be able to pull them off because he's not looking for a re-election, so it'll be a bit more easier. Let's go across to the impact on other nations of Obama being in office for a second term vis-a-vis Pakistan. We've seen the deteriorating relationship of the past year vis-a-vis India, also China.
Yeah, Al, that is the second point I wanted to make, his international perception of the U.S. engagement with all the countries in the world, I think here I see him consolidating, what he has already done, during his 4-year tenure. As far as India is concerned, I think he would like to turn to India as regards economic engagement, because job creation is, straight away linked to that, and also increased level of defense cooperation between India and U.S. Because if you see, during his presidency, there had been a lot of cooperation between India and U.S. And if we take into account the past, defense deals between India and U.S., so it comes to around $10 billion US for a decade. So which is, of course, a very meager amount. But I think Obama would like to increase this figure. But I think there are also concerns vis-a-vis India because the high-end technology, especially defense-related technology, and the civil and nuclear deal which we have signed. Right. So there are some riders to that. For example, liability act is there. We have not been able to satisfy U.S. on that count, and maybe some other deals, for example, defense deal, which has gone to, Eurofighter, didn't go to US, and I think these are some of the right. But as far as China is concerned, I think China should be more happier, having Obama in the White House, because if you see Romney, his speech is as regard China, so he was totally hostile. He thought that during first day of my presidency, I will declare China as a currency manipulator.
Right.
So I think that must have been a huge relief for China. But I think at the same time, Obama is going to consolidate this his pivot to Asia, which is spending more on defense, especially the increasing of U.S. Military assets in Asia Pacific by over 5%. That makes it 60% of the capabilities would be concentrated in
So all
Asia.
in all, Professor B.R. Deepak, the leadership change that we are seeing, Obama assuming his second term, it does have global impact. And 2012, these two events probably would be the highlight, the politically most important events of this year. I'll have to wrap up on this.
Yeah,
Thanks so much
definitely,
for joining me this
my
week
pleasure.
on World's Panorama. As we head into a break, here's a look at what messages various world leaders had to say to US President Barack Obama. We'll be back.
Well, I'd like to congratulate Barack Obama on his re-election. I've really enjoyed working with him over these last few years, and I look forward to working with him again.
Obama's last term wasn't very good for Pakistan. I'm talking about Pakistan specifically. It wasn't a very, for us, there was more violence, more drone attacks. In his second term, Obama might not be, he might be able to withstand the pressure from the generals.
I think it was a real democratic campaign with the ups and downs. I think the two candidates tried to keep it in the very fair way. For that reason, I think that the victory of Obama is a real victory.
I congratulate President Obama on his victory. I know it was a very hard-fought election, and we look forward to working with the President for the next 4 years.
Watching World's Panorama. Time now to take a look at some of the other international news in a quick wrap. Here's Globe Watch.
A defiant Bashar al-Assad on Thursday rejected calls that he was seeking a safe exit and vowing he will live in Syria and die in Syria. On Tuesday, British Prime Minister David Cameron floated the idea of granting Assad safe passage from the country, saying it could be arranged, although he wanted him to face international justice. During his India visit, Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper called for greater momentum to fortify bilateral relations with India. He said the common goal of both nations is to strengthen economic ties by expanding bilateral trade to $15 billion by 2015. Earlier on Tuesday, the two countries announced the conclusion of an agreement to implement their civil nuclear deal. Indonesian President Susilo Yudhoyono opened the 5th Bali Democracy Forum on Thursday, telling fellow leaders that they have a common interest in promoting democratic principles in Asia-Pacific. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Afghan President Hamid Karzai and other world leaders talked democracy at the start of a 2-day forum in Indonesia on Thursday.
If you've missed the week's biggest sporting events, here's your chance to catch up. We bring you sports action.
Tour de France and Olympic time trial champion Bradley Wiggins spent the night in hospital with minor rib injuries after a collision with a van near his home in Lancashire, Northern England on Wednesday. Police were alerted to the incident after reports of a road traffic accident. Chelsea rode their luck to beat a superior Shakhtar Donetsk 3-2 at Stamford Bridge on Wednesday to put their Champions League campaign back on track. Substitute Victor Moses headed a last-minute winner to give the European champions the win they hardly deserved. The Andhra Pradesh High Court Thursday struck down the life ban imposed on former India captain Mohammad Azharuddin by the BCCI 12 years ago. Azharuddin had challenged the Indian Cricket Board's decision in the city's civil court. He then moved to High Court against the lower court's order, his lawyers arguing that the BCCI imposed the ban without any evidence.
Time now for the very latest news from the world of movies and lifestyle. Here's our entertainment wrap. Daniel Craig and director Quentin Tarantino were just some of the stars seen on the red carpet ahead of the BAFTA LA Britannia Awards in Beverly Hills on November 7th. Craig received the Britannia Award for British Artist of the Year. Tarantino, whose Django Unchained opened in December, received the John Schlesinger Britannia Award for Excellence in Directing. Actors Colin Firth and Cameron Diaz team up in comedy caper Gambit, and the duo walked the red carpet together too on Wednesday night for the film's London premiere. 40-year-old Diaz plays PJ, a Texas rodeo queen who ends up helping Colin Firth's art curator character Harry Deane to con his boss into buying a fake Monet painting. Victoria's Secret rolled out the pink carpet ahead of their annual fashion show in New York on a snowy Wednesday night. Headliners Justin Bieber and Rihanna heated things up as they posed for pictures before hitting the catwalk to perform. Other stars who came out to see the event included photographer Nigel Barker, musician Debbie Harry and DJ Afrojack, who said the fashion show would be his first. That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with more world news. Till then, you can join us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. This week, we wrap up Down Under as the Prince of Wales and his wife Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, toured Australia on the second leg of their Diamond Jubilee tour. Here are some highlights. Goodbye and thanks for watching.